This is Andrew Hada from Nothing Ventured Media. I want to tell you about all the feature films we've made and how you can see them right now. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one's a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. The documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, A Family of Fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. And if that's not enough for you, Hada Films is home to all of our short films. So take a look around and see what you like. Spend your day with Hada Films and Nothing Ventured Media. Now, let's start the bomb squad. Welcome to the Bomb Squad, guys. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our 2020 favorites. It was pretty cool. I saw Nosferatu again, and it was just as good. So today we're going out of 2024 and into 1994.
30 years
by
previous.
95.
by the way,
yeah.
give me. I'm literally looking at IMDb Pro right now.
Yeah, I think it's 94.
It's 94. I don't know why you're arguing. Looks like Wikipedia let Joshua down.
No,
Yeah,
on
sorry.
Amazon Prime it says 1995. Looks
but
like
yes.
Jeff Bezos let me down.
So we're going to 1994, where we're covering In the Mouth of Madness, directed by John Carpenter, written by Michael DeLuca, one of the weird movies that John Carpenter did not write that he made. It's also the second part. No, it's the third part in his Apocalypse trilogy. It started with The Thing, and then it went on to The Fog, and now this is the third and final installment. It stars Sam Neill, everyone's favorite American accented man. It stars
Yeah.
Jugan Prakchua. I just wanted to say that
No.
name. Take that, English language.
Jurgen, I think isn't it Jurgen?
Jorgen Prakchona. It stars Julie Carmen, kind of. It stars David Warner, John Glover, and of course, it stars Frances Bay, who everyone knows as Happy Gilmore's grandma.
And Charlton Heston.
Oh, yeah. I was like,
Oh, yeah, it
where
also
do I
has
know this
Charlton
lady
Heston.
from?
And of course, it has William von Homburg, who will be playing a very important and definitely not American role. So, let's talk about this movie. Josh, why don't you tell us what this movie is? And if you take us out of the city and spoil anything that happens afterwards, you will be sent into the mouth of madness.
Oh, my God.
Well, this movie, which did release in the United States in 1995, not 94, is about a detective, Sam Neill, who basically uncovers insurance scams and such. But then they're
Yeah.
like, hey, our star author, Sutter Kane, who's definitely not H.P. Lovecraft, by the way. He's a different guy.
Yeah.
Has gone missing. And, we need you to find him. He writes these crazy books. And as he investigates the case further, he finds himself slipping into the mouth of madness.
Rolling down that tongue, baby.
Interesting, especially because this movie premiered on August 10th, 1994, and was released in the U.S. on February 3rd, 1995. But because we are not an American strictly podcast, it was made in 1994.
I don't know about
what did
that.
you think? I know Josh is a xenophobe, so that's why we don't listen to him. What do you think? Oh, I will say, I feel like he's a mix. Xenophobe. No, he's a xylophobe. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
I will say he's kind of a mix of H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King.
A little Clive Barker, too. He's got some Clive in there.
Yeah. And the content is very H.P. Lovecraft, but the book covers are coming straight out of Stephen King.
The covers are Stephen King.
They're kind of like almost leaning towards like a romantic romantic novel. Even like a little bit of Goosebumps is in there.
Yeah.
But
they look like interesting. They look like they're kids, kind of.
Yeah. So this movie, it starts off with our lead protagonist, Sam Neill, as he goes he's in an insane asylum, and they're like, how did he get here? And then so we flash back. And then it starts off, he's like a book detective. This is the second movie about book detectives ever made. Where they're like, it starts off and they're like, wow, you did such a good job. And he's like, he's like exposing the guy who cheated on his wife, right?
Yeah, he's doing some kind of insurance fraud.
Yeah.
He's like an insurance,
he had burned down his own warehouse, but then he'd let his mistress wear the clothes that were supposedly burned down. Yeah.
And then it cuts. Importantly, Sam Neill does this job freelance. He doesn't work for a company. He, I guess, goes to insurance places and is like,
he's like a private detective. That's a thing.
Yeah, crazy. That's the weirdest job.
They're also like, hey man, you should work with us. And he's like, oh, I gotta be my own boss. It's like, you want to be your own insurance detective guy? Like, why?
Exactly.
That's the most corporate job ever. That'd be like, I do freelance as a middle manager.
Right.
I was like, okay.
Benefits are better at the store, dude.
A tax auditor that can't be tied down.
My favorite thing is it's the guy who hired him is like, wow, I really wanted to see you in action, and I was not disappointed. And he's like, yeah, I mean, he literally was dumb as hell. I don't know, I didn't really do anything. And he's like, done it again, Columbo, and I'm like, I don't know how. Like, I'm supposed to be taking this because he made it seem like it wasn't that hard. But the other guy,
you find a professional.
I do think that's kind of good shorthand for like he is like a Columbo style, like he just instantly knows if someone's guilty or not.
Yeah,
being thrust into a situation where it's like, no, logically none of this makes sense.
Right.
You know, so it's an interesting kind of dynamic.
Yeah, and so like to go to this world for sure.
They want to hire him to find this author named Sutter Kane, which is the most 90s author name of all time. Like Tom Clancy, Stephen King, Sutter Kane. Like it doesn't fall far from the tree. But so they want him to find Sutter Kane, but he thinks that it's a publicity stunt. And so he's like, no, I don't believe you guys. I don't really want to do this. I mean, he's a horror director. He's disappeared with his last book. It just seems too convenient. He's like, so I'll leave. And he goes to have lunch, and like it's one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie because he's having lunch with someone else, and you see someone walking towards the camera.
Yeah.
Outside, the guy is outside of the restaurant. He's walking towards the window, and like it just slowly, like you just see him slowly get to it, and then he like lifts up an axe and he puts it in, or he like breaks through the window and he goes, have you read Sutter Kane?
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, what a way to start a movie.
I know, that was really cool. And like his eye is weird. He has like two pupils kind of.
And like people who read Sutter Kane, like this new version of Sutter Kane that's a weird book, they have their eyes start to change kind of dilation, and they also change color. And then they start to bleed, and that's how he looks. We don't know that yet. We just know
they're accused of being paranoid. It's like, his writing causes some people to be paranoid schizophrenics. Like it unleashes that. But
it's like the King in Yellow, or that series. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Carcosa stuff. Yeah.
And so then he goes to the most perfectly classed book CEO of all time, Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
This is a good role though.
I will say, Charlton Heston showed up in a bunch of movies. Like, he's in True Lies as, like, the FBI director, and he looks like Nick Fury. And he's in this. And both of those roles, you're like, why did you pick Charlton Heston? But goddamn, is he well...
He
Yeah, he
like
does a good
adds
job.
gravitas to it.
Yeah.
You forget because he went crazy, but you're like, oh, he really like did kind of have this like distinguished like presence, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
He's like a
And
conservative
so,
Paul Newman or something.
yeah, he has that. Yeah, he has that kind of presence. Is the best way to describe it. And so he's like, "Hey, man, we just want to hire you again. Like, we're just gonna ask you one more time." Like, his agent went crazy, and Sam Neill's like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, you met him. He's that guy who broke that window and
It's
like
the guy
asked
who
you to
got
read
shot
Sutter
in front
Kane."
of your face.
Yeah, which I thought was like, "Oh, that's interesting." That like because until that moment happens, you don't realize that he doesn't really know that much about Sutter Kane.
Right.
And so
right.
it does add to the intrigue of like, what is this? Is this weirder? And so he finally decides to take the job. And then they send her with Julie Carmen, who plays Linda Stiles again. Okay, guys.
Oh, also, I want to point out that I love the way that Sam Neill deals with the trauma of almost getting killed is by going home and taking a single shot of tequila while sitting in his living room.
Yeah.
That's how he deals
That's
with
how
it.
that's how
Classic
British
detective.
that's how British Americans handle things.
Absolutely.
And I will say
He's from New Zealand, first
Right.
of
his
all.
name is John Trent, but his voice is constantly like breaking into his accent. You can kind of hear it. But I think like
He's
it
losing his
doesn't
mind.
matter. Yeah, he doesn't have to be from America.
Yeah.
He's not Josh, where everything has to be American based.
Right.
He could
Release
be from
date.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I count the U.S. release date. That's all.
So
That's
that's
the one
all.
that matters.
That was a very like cartoony way of you saying that's
Hands
all.
off.
That's all.
Fuck you. We're at 9 minutes. I could say it. So then they're like, okay, well, let's go. Like, we'll do it. And like at this point, Sam Neill is still like, you're full of shit, you know.
Right.
But they're gonna go to his last location because okay. Before I continue, so Sutter Kane, he's this book author. He disappeared about 6 months ago with his latest manuscript. So they're hiring to see if he's still alive, but more importantly, get the manuscript because this is America.
Yeah. They're gonna lose.
And they don't
$1
care
billion.
about anything but
Yeah,
money.
yeah. They're like, or if he could prove he's dead and find it, so we still
Right,
make
yeah.
the
Get the
money.
cash,
That's
yeah.
fine. But no, because as he's going into it, and this is kind of what I like is it's not like strange things happen once he gets to the town. He's already being affected because he starts reading Sutter Kane books and he's like,
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
oh, like, you know, these are like, I think he literally says,
They're getting
slimy
your head.
things in the dark, people go
Yeah,
mad, they
yeah.
turn into monster. Like, he's like dismissing it, but it's clearly affecting him because he's having this like repeat vision of like this like a ghoul like cop like
Mhm.
beating a homeless person
Right.
while
Yeah.
like people watch, and it's very like, and it has this is funny because I feel like this was like a jump scare before they became so normalized that you're like expecting them, where he like sees the cop, wakes up, and then the cop's next to him in bed.
Yeah,
And it does the
yeah.
music stick, and I was like, it gets me.
It got me too. That was
And
good. That was a good scene.
I will also say that throughout this movie, there's things that like, because they don't say that he's dreaming. They just show him like walking down an alley, seeing the
Yeah.
cop, and then he wakes up, and that happens multiple times, and it's constantly asking you like, okay, did this really happen, or was this just the guy messing with him? Was it his imagination? Also, I like that because he's on the phone with his like friend, I guess, or he doesn't have a boss,
Yeah.
and he's like, yeah, I've been reading a lot of Sutter
Famously.
Kane books.
Yeah.
It's been getting to my head. And I just want to hear the guy like, will you go find this guy? I don't care about you reading
Right.
his books.
This isn't a library.
And I will-
Good job.
I do also, because I want to bring this up later, but I will say that Sam Neill, John Trent, the character, not Sam Neill, the person. Sam Neill's very lovely and optimistic, but John Trent is like what I feel like, because all of Carpenter's protagonists have an air of pessimism to them.
Yeah,
But
totally.
I feel like John Trent is the closest that we ever get to having just John Carpenter be the lead of his own movie, because
Totally.
he
yeah.
is so
Very
like,
abrasive.
He's like, people will do
Again,
anything,
this is-
man. People are fucked up.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is the year of our Lord 1994. It's not the future of 1995.
It's definitely 95 in the context of the film.
They the Carmen Linda Stiles is telling, and she works for the book agency, and she's telling Sam Neill about the books, and she's like, yeah, I heard that this books drive people crazy. That doesn't make you like weirded out. And Sam Neill's like, I mean, we fucked up the water, we fucked up the air, we fucked up each other. what else is there? It's just time to die.
And he just
And
goes
it's
down an
like
elevator.
this is the 90s. We haven't even gotten.
Yeah, you shouldn't feel the way I feel now.
I know.
2025.
We're still in the Clinton era, man. Our economy's all right,
baby. Yeah.
But I think that's so fun. Like he's so pissed, and like it kind of adds to why he's so he doesn't like believe any of this.
Yeah. It makes it
It's
way better.
interesting
He's
how
truly
pessimistic he is.
Yeah.
Cynical, yeah, it's right. And then they take off and they start seeing weird things on the road. Like one of the best moments.
Oh, you forget he finds this town with a map made out of the book covers.
Yes.
That don't really form a map.
I didn't understand. That was the
like,
only part of the movie that I was like, what?
They brush over it quick, but I was like, whatever. You can kind of see how it.
I'm like, hey, we gotta get there, guys.
I mean, honestly,
it's very
that was the first part in the movie where I was like, okay, so Sam Neill is already insane. Like he's cutting up his book covers like a crazy person. Like, okay,
yeah, because no one could have figured that out. Like it's nothing.
And
but it's what Hobbs End is the town, right?
But
like
see, I don't know. Oh,
I love it.
And I was gonna say real fast. Now that we've covered Hobbs End, William is from Hobbs, and
yes,
also, so every time I watch this movie, I forget that it's called Hobbs End. But then when they get there, I'm like, oh, that's where William's from.
It's so cool.
And I
pretty
will
similar
say,
too. I know.
One of the trivia was that Hobbs means devil in like an ancient language, and that's very funny that William's just from the Devil Town.
Just from Devil Town, yeah. It's right next to Levy.
No wonder his music.
The neighboring town is Levy.
Yeah, no wonder his music's so creepy. Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Darkness to your soul.
No.
So they're driving, and I like the scene of them driving because it's like it captures that mood of driving in the highway at night because everything's black, except for them.
Right.
Like it doesn't. There's not even the arbitrary like, oh, they're moving. It's just kind of the cars rocking, so you know it's moving, but that's it. Like
this is also. It's funny because the very first thing they see is this kid on a bike in the darkness, and then they pass him again, but he's like really old and kind of the obvious old age makeup. And then she accidentally hits him, and so they get out, and he's just like, he won't let me leave. He won't let me leave. So like right away, like, oh, this town is like an insane trap.
Right.
You're definitely like screwed. Like going through this. And I love too that the kid actor's name is Sean Vertigo. And I'm like,
damn,
what an appropriate name to be a child trapped in an endless loop
in the 90s,
of riding a bike.
I know. And one of the things I like about it is that the kid's crying. He's like, oh, he won't let me leave. He won't let me leave. And then she hears something. She looks up, and then the kid like pulls his bike up around her as if like he's just coming towards her for the first time. And he kind of like looks at her and he's like, bye. And he drives away. And I think that that's really good because there's this, they're like The Exorcist is famous for this, where Linda Blair does a really good job of kind of showing when she's possessed by the devil and when she's not possessed by the devil, when she's like a normal person. Yeah. And that but that's like a hard thing to do. But this movie's constantly doing it where like, I think when that kid was saying, I'm stuck here, that was really the kid, but then whoever took over him is the one who takes over, and then they kind of move him. And there's like a couple of scenes where you see someone acting normal, and then you can tell that they've been taken over, and they say something to someone.
Right.
Yeah.
I buy that.
Like a shift.
Yeah. When he goes to the bookstore, there's like some guy who randomly walks up to him, and he's talking normal, and then he goes, do you love Sarakain? And his eyes are bleeding. And it's yeah, he sees you, and people keep saying that.
He says,
and so then, yeah, he's such a dick. And then he tells them, but then like once she sees a kid, she like wakes up and it's daytime, or she like finishes driving and it's like daytime and they've gone to the town. And then Sam Neill wakes up and he's like, wow, you found it, perfect. And it's like, Sam Neill, how long has she been driving that you just haven't waken up?
I know, she's been driving for like 30 minutes.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't need a boss? You don't even help your coworkers.
And it's like full daylight again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the middle of the day.
That's what I like. They go to this. It's Pickman's Hotel, which is good because the H.P. Lovecraft story is Pickman's model, so Pickman's Motel.
That's an H.P. Lovecraft thing. The Pickman. Oh,
yeah, and it's Mrs. Pickman. and I love this scene too because it's like the classic nice old lady running like a nice like little
Like
like
Airbnb or
cottage,
something.
Yeah.
type thing.
Or B&B.
And like Sam Neill's like, oh, do you know Sutter Kane? She's like, I've never heard of him. And at first you're like, oh, like there's something crazy here where the people in the town don't know who he is. And then one scene later you realize, no, everyone in town knows who he is. This lady is just a psychopath.
Right.
Well, yeah. And that's the weird thing is that it does feel kind of like a town taken over by like evil because you never really know.
It is.
You never really know when someone's lying or when someone like just has their mind erased or what they're doing. Like there's a scene, and like I will say, and we'll talk about it later, but Linda Stiles does a great job here because she keeps seeing weird shit, and she's kind of recognizing that a lot of this stuff is coming from his books. But like, how do you honestly convey that to your friend? You know, like what the hell's happening? Like there's a dog being chased, and she sees them being chased by this kids, and the kids like are literally like trying to kill the dog, but like then they just kind of drive. But like if you're not paying attention, it just looks like a bunch of kids chasing a dog.
Yeah.
So you're like, what are you?
Yeah, it's like subtle little hints. Yeah, because they even say in the hotel, like she's like, oh, it's that exact painting and it's that exact like view from the window, and he's like, yeah, but in the book, like the old lady innkeeper is a psychopath, and then as they're like leaving, it pans down to she's like changing her husband.
He's like naked.
It's all happening just out of view, essentially.
And one thing that they introduce is that a lot of the stuff that's happening at that moment is from his new manuscript that only Linda has read, which I think adds like a little element of like she knows more than him, which gives her more reason to be scared, which gives us more reason to be scared.
Yeah.
And then Sam Neill is just kind of along for a little bit. And so they're kind of walking around. They go to the church because they were like, that's the scene that Josh was talking about where they're like, if this was the Sutter Kane town, there'd be a church right here. And she's like, no, it's the other side. She opens the window and you see it. And so they go to the church and it's locked. And that's when like a bunch of town folks come in. And then William von Humberg comes in and he's like looking for his son. And I will say, so William von Humberg, you probably don't know who he is. But if you've ever seen Ghostbusters Part 2, he's Vigo, the painting that comes to life. And that movie, he's perfectly cast because he looks like an ancient god of war from like the barbarian times. In this movie, he's supposed to be playing like a farmer in like New England.
Right.
Yeah, like I'm just a farmer worried about my son. You're like, no, you're not. You're the most German man alive.
It's literally the meme from Inglourious Bastards where they like hold the three fingers.
Yeah.
That's not how we do it over here. He's like, my harvest must go until the wheat falls, and it's like nobody in America talks. We don't know how to read.
Progeny layeth within the church. Also, that church is like crazy for a little town, by the way. Like it's like it looks like
it's like Byzantine.
Kinda. It looks like demonic for sure, which is Hobbes Mexico. I can't believe Hobbes means the devil. I never knew that until you said that. It's crazy.
It makes so much sense. And I think like that's another cool thing is like that's a great way to show how different this town is because again, it's supposed to be New England, and like New England and all of America has a bunch of different churches. Like even here, you go to, the synagogue, you go to the mosque, and you have like Catholic churches, of course. But this one, it has like Russian architecture. It has like the kind of
the onion. I think they call it an onion.
Yeah, the onion that the square has, and so like it just doesn't look right.
And so it's very new looking.
It like adds to how weird. Yeah. And I love that, like, so they get there and they're like, I want my boy. Give me my child. And so then the doors open and the boy's just standing there. And the guy's like, come on, Billy, come to me. And then the doors start opening and closing, like almost daring the town folks to like, come on in. Like, that's all you got to do. And then one time it closes, it opens. And then we finally see Drogon as Sutter Kane. And he like kind of talks to him. And like, he's the most, kind of sucks to refer to him now, but he does look almost exactly like Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
In how he dresses and his hair.
And is as evil as
and he is as evil,
currently apparently was this whole time.
Bummer.
Oh man.
But this is also like kind of where things are like, because he literally appears in the doorway summons
A
Dobermans
whole
to
bunch
attack
of
the
so many
townspeople.
Dobermans, like 15.
And then they're like running to the car, and then like a demon child comes up to the car. It's like, "Will you be my mommy?" And then it's like, and Sam Neill's like, "You guys are pranking me." It's like, come on,
Right.
Sam.
Yeah.
You guys are really
Yeah.
doing this.
And see, and I love because then like Linda's like super freaked out, and like and what my favorite thing in this I've said that like 8 times so far is where she
Yeah.
goes, "No, you don't understand. This was a prank. It was PR, but not
Right.
this. Like we were just supposed to find nothing and like explain like, oh, he's been missing, and then he was gonna come out." But then he didn't show up for the prank, and now we don't know what the hell is going on, and this is definitely not part of it. But then Sam Neill's still very dismissive, and I can see that because, like, why would you? It's like I was lying to you about this part, but not this part. It's like, why would I believe any of
but
this?
and that is like a fun like to give him a reason to keep doubting her. But I also think too because things really escalate quickly after this, and it's like at that point he's just straight up denying his eyes because it's like
Monsters
literally
just
he's
become
starting to
stuff,
see monsters and stuff. Yeah.
But you know what? That kind of that brought up a good point, and I kind of want to talk about this at the end. But I think you hit a little bit of the nail on the head because one of my I love this movie, but I do have a couple of issues with it, and one of them is how like cynical John is. Like he's just such a like he doesn't care about anything. Where like with McCready, at least McCready from The Thing wanted to live.
Yeah.
Like he had that kind of like he had enough of that to not want to die and stop the aliens. It doesn't seem like Sam Neill really cares.
I mean, he literally says
dies.
that
He's
the
kind of
planet
like
would be better off when we're all gone. Like he's like just straight up nihilist. Like he's out.
And I've always wondered like why did you make this guy the protagonist? And I assume John Carpenter like relates to him because he's super cynical as well. But I think that does bring up a good point. What you just said is that it's like he's the perfect candidate for this because he's the guy who's going to see a 12-foot monster or a bunch of kids running after a dog with like cleavers and just kind of dismiss it as like,
who made this?
This is just humans. Humans are gross. Yeah. And he's kind of like he doesn't want to believe that there could be more out there, whether it's good or bad. And I think that kind of makes him a really good
because then that would totally shatter his worldview, for sure. And he can't have that. No one wants that.
And it doesn't.
It was a hard nut to crack.
But yeah, so then they go to the church, and then Linda's like trying to get him to stay, and like she starts kissing him. She's like, "Please don't make me do this by myself." And he's like, "Get off! What the hell? That's weird." And so then she goes to the church, and that's where she meets Sutter. And this is like the I will say, go watch this movie. Don't go further if you haven't. Go check it out because it's super cool. It goes to some places that you're not going to expect, and we don't want to ruin it for you. If you haven't watched it, we'll keep going. But
so good, yeah.
Go watch it right now. But so then she goes to meet him, and he's like, "Come with me. Come meet my new publishers." And he tells her that like he always thought that it was his imagination, but he didn't realize that someone was telling him to write this stuff. And then they start kissing, and she like puts her head on the back of his head, and then he has another head. Like fucking that movie. What was that movie called?
It's like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
All the like she's right out of that movie. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. And you see like, and I love it because it's like his body keeps going, and it's this kind of grotesque version of the human being.
Like a puppet of a of a monster being a person.
And it kind of looks like that. What was that movie that we watched about the kid whose family is like rich? And then they all end up being like monsters at the end, and they're like slimy people.
Oh,
Society. It totally had those kind of vibes too.
Yeah.
Like the way the makeup looked.
Yeah, it definitely has Society. Yeah. We'll cover Society one day. Me and William saw that when we were in Portland just hanging out. Sometimes we watch movies for fun. But yeah, that movie rocks. For different reasons, not for character reasons.
Different films.
Yes. And so she goes back, and then that's when I do love because like at the very beginning when they see the painting, it's like a couple, and then like she sees it and the painting is now the couple, the girl's looking at her.
Yeah, like turns.
And then when they finally go back to the hotel, now that couple has turned into like these weird monsters that are crawling on the ground. And it looks like their skin is all pulled back. And it's like Yeah, your guys are all screwed now.
I don't even know what to call
No
these
more.
things. These are just monsters. Old gods.
Great beasts. Yeah, that's when Sam Neill's like, all right, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah.
I'm done. And then he finds that he is now stuck in the same
Right.
kind of loop where he cannot leave the town.
He keeps trying to drive, and every time he drives, he ends up at the same spot. So, like, he's also, like, there's also, the townfolk is now completely transformed into these killers. Their eyes are all red. They just want to commit violence. And so he, like, gets into a bar, and he meets that farmer again, and the farmer kind of tells him, like, oh,
he says, reality is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
That's a good,
that's
a good line.
And he has, like, a shotgun, and Sam Neill's like, hey, don't kill yourself. And he's like, I have to. I was written this way. And he kills himself. Which I think that's what makes that book cover thing not a plot hole. Because I think, like, is the fact that it doesn't make sense. Is that part of it? Because maybe it was like, oh, Sutter Kane just wrote this in. He didn't really care if it made sense or not. He just needed Sam Neill to get to that point. And so then you realize...
He wrote Sam Neill finding the town in the most esoteric way possible.
Yeah. And it's after he's gone a little bit crazy, so he's already protected by Sutter Kane. And then he cuts up the total. That's got to be what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's also why, because you have the guy who plays Vigo in this movie. And, like, when I say that this guy looks not American, like, I don't mean, like, oh, they could tell because I've seen a movie with him. Like, his features are very European. And I wonder if John Carpenter put him in this role of, like, American farmer, because he wanted you to look at that guy and be like, no,
make it look a little uncanny somehow.
Farmer? You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole thing,
and
kind of has those vibes.
If that's why he did it, I think that's a genius way to do it. Like, oh wait, kind of like, what the hell, like playing with that idea of even who's being cast is kind of working against.
Yeah, and Sam Neill also is not an American, but he has, like, a weird American voice, but it's, like, not quite American. It's like a little transatlantic kind of. It's just a little off. Yeah, even though it's great, don't get me wrong.
Right. And so then, like, he tries to get out, he crashes, and he ends up in front of the church, or he ends up inside the church. And that's where he's met by Linda and Sutter, and they, like, kind of, like, explain that they're working together, and he's taken over her. And then he says that that the amount of people who liked his books kind of made them real. And like, now these old gods have kind of heard, and they're kind of coming out because of
they're gaining power.
And the old gods are very Lovecraftian, just kind of like grotesque, huge monsters.
This is the one part, because this movie we haven't really said much about it, but the actual special effects are all, like, practical effects, and they're all really
very
good.
Slimy, very wet.
This is the one part where you're like, oh no, 90s CGI, where, like, the page opens, Sutter Kane becomes a book page and splits open, and you're like, ooh, okay, well, it's fine. It's the 90s. It's 1995, really cool. As we've established.
And I will say, it's weird because of how many times in the 90s a CGI person turns into a book was a thing. Like, it's in this one.
What are your other examples?
It's in Page Master. Yeah.
Oh,
it's in that young King Arthur, or young Sherlock Holmes. It's in. It's like, okay, yes, everyone just turns into pages.
Everyone is all about books.
Nowadays, millennials would be like, "What's a book? I don't understand."
Chapter?
They would be going crazy on their smartphones.
Yeah. They turn into a screen.
Take that.
Great one.
Sutter Kane would be a podcast host talking to him. We're not going to get into it.
Getting too real. It was written this way. It was foretold.
I was getting too annoyed. But so then he's like, oh, come on, we got to go. And he tells Linda, and she's like, no, I already read the end of this book. I'm going to stay here. And so he's being chased by these monsters, and he suddenly finds himself outside of the town. And he, like, has that manuscript in his hand.
He literally is running through a tunnel and falls, and it's just like it's daylight. And he's like, what? And we should say here, he has the manuscript in his hand. Who approaches him?
Vertigo.
Who? The kid.
No, different kid on it. Sean Vertigo's gone. Forget about Sean
Back
Vertigo.
in 93.
This is Hayden Christensen in his film debut. Anakin Skywalker
Damn.
rolls up and is like, "Hey, Mister, you feeling okay? Anyway, I've never heard of
Yeah,
Hobbs End.
total No
Bye."
Country for Old Men scene.
Bikes
Like,
away.
that was like the exact same scene. It's like, how do I get back to the highway? Sir, your bone is hanging out of your arm.
Damn.
That was like, that scene was like the exact same
Yeah.
thing. I was like,
Oh
my God.
yeah.
Yeah. They're very similar movies.
Yeah,
About
it's about
human
you can't stop
nature.
violence.
They
Oh,
have
no.
the same outlook on humanity.
You can't stop violence. It's good. And so then he goes into the real Hobbs End, and he's like, "Oh, hey, where's this place?" Blah, blah.
Yeah, he
They're
goes
like,
into whatever the town is. They're like, "We've never
Yeah.
heard of Hobbs End. This is
Yeah.
just some random
And
town
this
in
lady's like,
Maine."
there never was,
and they're like,
nor will there ever be a Hobbs End in this state. And it's like, how do you know? Like,
I know,
you don't know the future.
I know, you're a little bit too.
You have a lock on the
Yeah.
names of the
Little
city.
bit-
I do
you
like
can make
the,
a
like-
city ever.
because this is where he's still trying to look at this
Mhm.
rationally, because he's like, "I want to speak to your supervisor." Realizes he sounds
Yeah.
crazy and just leaves.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "All right," and then he tries to dump the manuscript, but then it keeps getting
Right.
delivered to him.
More Harry Potter.
You know,
Right.
it's like a weird where he's
Yeah.
like, "Who delivered this?" It's like, I don't know,
Anyone.
man. You know,
which makes it, which is even funnier because then, so he's like, the manager's going to him, and he meets up with Charlton Heston, and he's like, "Oh, I had to destroy the book. Like, there was no way I could let it be published." And then Charlton Heston's like, "What are you talking about? You gave me the
Yeah.
book like months ago. It's been published." So, and then he goes, "What do you mean?" He's like, "The movie comes out on Friday."
That was good. That was so
Oh.
funny.
It was just funny because that's the one
Yeah.
unrealistic part, that a movie would have that quick of a turnaround
Yeah.
from the book release. The only unrealistic part of this.
Yeah.
That's what you're pushing at Carpenter.
But
I mean, I don't know, because like they have, wasn't Jurassic Park like made alongside Michael Crichton's book? That's why Spielberg and him.
They might have,
kinda
yeah.
no,
ran
I
it.
That's what
actually
was like
don't
that, too.
know. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm wildly
And
wrong.
I mean, there's always like sometimes you hear about books that are optioned before they've
Yeah.
even been released. Which Sutter Kane is
Yeah.
a big enough name.
This is also my favorite
Although-
because as Sam Neill's losing his mind, he's like, "Have you read the book?" Like to Charlton Heston, he's like,
Yeah.
"No, I never read Kane's work.
Yeah.
I don't have the
Yeah.
stomach for it." He's just like a guy getting rich who has no
Yeah.
idea what's going
I know.
on. It's
How-
like, not for me,
Was
thank
expected to
you.
lead.
How apt.
Lead.
Yeah. And then it almost immediately cuts to like people outside of the bookstore, like buying the book, and then they run into Sam Neill, and now he's a bum, and he has my favorite line in the movie
He's a
because
bum.
he goes, "Hey, I know, I'm just gonna say favorite everything." He goes, "Hey, do you read Sutter Kane?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, then this won't be a surprise for you." He takes out an axe and he murders him. And I was like,
Whoa.
Yeah. That's
That
how he
was
gets
a-
into the insane asylum. That is an amazing scene. This movie's
"That's
like
a cool
like,
line."
the entire last 30 minutes is like the
Yeah,
best movie
yeah.
I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
It's very like it's very 28 days later.
And so
when
then
he walked out of the hospital.
Yeah. And yeah. Oh, and it feels like that. And I will say that this is, we don't want to spoil the whole ending, but this is the end of his Apocalypse trilogy. So make of that what you will. And we will recommend going to see it. But overall, okay, so I have a couple of gripes on this movie. And then I have a question for you guys, since you're gamers and I'm not a gamer. We already covered the he's too cynical. But I do feel like, and this isn't necessarily my problem, it's that this movie was a huge bomb when it came out. And I think it's because of the way it's made. Like the girl Julie just kind of disappears, or Linda just kind of disappears. And on huge moments of the script. And it feels like if they didn't have anything for her to do, she just would not be
Yeah.
that part of the script.
Definitely
And
not a strong lead.
And I also
for
feel,
a female lead.
and I, as much as I love the Shutter Kane, like the idea of it, I feel like he's not as big a presence when he's like the entire catalyst for everything. You almost want more from him, but he's only kind of like,
Yeah.
he only has a couple of scenes, he only has a couple
Probably
of
like 10
lines in
minutes
those
screen time
scenes.
tops.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see, but what I kind of like about it though, and I almost like, because there's almost the a lot of like, because this is definitely Lovecraftian horror, and it does this and ends this way, but where a lot of times it's like, oh, it's a haunted house, or like in The Shining, it's like, oh, if you're in this hotel, you're screwed because there's ghosts
Yeah.
all over this thing, But
Yeah.
if you can get away from it, you might be okay. But in this, he's like, he's screwed like from the moment the
Right,
movie
totally.
starts, because even before he finds the town, he's already on this course. So in that sense, like Sutter Kane's not the guy doing it. He's just the guy explaining, like, hey, this is already too late. Like, I'm not even really the one doing this. This is just happening, you know? So I kind of appreciate that it's like the inevitability
like
of it.
That's more the villain than the Sutter Kane. And the inevitability.
Yeah. And that's definitely what they were going for. I just think like if they had given him like one monologue, like monologue,
where he like explains that he's just a conduit of ideas or something, which I guess he kind of does.
But and that's of course as much as we might want. And like he does, but I feel like what I think it is that he never tells John. He tells Linda. He kind of talks about it amongst himself. But with John, he's very like he doesn't really know, so John never really knows, and I feel like there's not that kind of connection between him and John as much as there should.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah,
he's definitely not a strong villain in that sense, for sure.
And of course, this one is 100% just personal preference. Like the movie works fine the way it is. I just think I just wanted like more, because you're like the anticipation building up to seeing Sutter Kane is it's the whole movie. It's like half of the movie, and so once it happens, you're kind of like okay. And then one of the good things that I think that this movie does is that John Carpenter really knows how to make things feel off, like from The Thing to The Fog. And I like that it keeps getting bigger. From like The Thing is a Arctic base, The Fog is like a church in the middle of the city, but they kind of go out. And this is just full everywhere. Like it's the New York, they're in a small town. And he really like the way he shoots things. If you're an aspiring filmmaker, just watch any John Carpenter film. But the way he shoots things, he really plays with how much space he has in every location. Like in the insane asylum, it's real long hallways. It feels very kind of medical and like very cold. But then he can also, when he puts us in this small town, it feels very foreign and alien. And it's like any location you kind of give him, he's able to kind of draw out what he needs.
He finds what works and what'll work
from there.
Vision. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Except, of course, when he talks to James Woods, then nothing works. But that's neither here nor there.
Isn't that just how it always goes?
Wait, what movie is that?
We'll talk about vampires one day. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I've never seen it. Interesting.
But yes, and I think, like, I don't know. I just think that Carpenter is one of the best. And I think that's why. Because he's also one of the only directors who's really dealing with cosmic horror. Even from back then to now. Like, there's not a lot of people, like that one. But I think that that's like, to me, it's hard to make cosmic horror scary because it's so
abstract.
Yeah, that's why it works so well in like novels and like short stories, is because it's more about like the state.
But I also
exactly.
Like, I think
like Samuel's face is like really good at conveying that kind of like, I know I'm losing my mind, but like when you read it, it's like that's what really makes it like churning. Like it's harder. Yeah,
you're in his psychology. Yeah. But like, and I noticed this too in this one, because it's like, obviously, like with monsters and like cosmic horror, it's almost hard to like show that on screen. But he does a really good job of blending it with like, there's a lot of just like mobs in this movie. Like with like the first time he's seeing like the visions of the cop, and it's like, in real life, nothing would be scarier than a mob of like crazed people like looking at you, and you're
that's
like,
the whole video game of
die, you know? And because I was like, and that's ever was it Prince of Darkness, where it's literally just a mob of like 20 people of like trapped in a church, and it's almost like the threat's like, because 20 people will kill you if you like leave this building. And it's like, that's like real, you know, like it's like the threat is implied, and this movie actually kind of does that. It's like the mob like leads him to the church almost. It's interesting. It's a good like real versus cosmic thing.
Also, I just want to add, I feel like I've been calling Prince of Darkness the Fog this entire time, and I was like,
I didn't think people liked the Fog.
Because Prince of Darkness is the middle entry in the Apocalypse trilogy, not the Fog. The Fog is just a cool movie with pirates. The Prince of Darkness is the one you should watch in the middle, and it's also the weakest one, so it doesn't really matter. But I will say, so now that we've those are my only complaints, but they're real good. And I think that's why maybe this movie didn't do as well.
It's also like that shit crazy.
But now that we've gone that, I want to Yeah, and it's also like
Yeah.
very dark and very cynical. Like it kind of when I went to go see, I was talking to you guys about this, but I went to go see Nosferatu again. I realized like, oh man, this movie's just
Yeah.
unrelenting, like terror the
It's
entire
never
time. I
chill.
can understand why. Like you don't want to go with
Right.
your family to go see this movie where like they're just
Yeah.
constant horrors.
Yeah,
Um,
there's
It's
just
only
no
tension.
relief. Yeah.
but yeah, but let me ask you guys, what do you think of this movie as kind of the closest film adaptation of Silent Hill?
Oh,
If you've ever
yeah,
played that
totally.
game, it's a very similar.
More so than the actual film Silent Hill.
Well, I mean, the actual film Silent Hill gets a little bit
Right.
more credence, but this one is kind of like I feel like Silent Hill, the other one, is cool, but it feels very like Hollywoodized. Where this movie is dealing with that external
Yeah,
dread that the games play
totally.
with.
Yeah.
That it's
No one's
hard to
gonna
compare.
no one in this is gonna coolly like
Right.
jump
You're
and
just gonna
shoot
get chased
something
by
with a
people and
shotgun.
hide.
It's
Right,
literally
right.
just like let's
Yeah.
run
I can
and
see it.
life is
I didn't
bad.
make
No,
that
I
connection,
could
but
see
it's
it.
definitely
And
there
Yeah.
I
for sure.
think
Yeah.
I make that connection every time I see this movie because I'm like, man, this movie feels so much like
Right.
Silent Hill. Like they're going to a weird
And they
town,
just
they're trying to
re-released
find
Silent
an
Hill 2. It's supposed to be
answer.
like one of the
They
scariest
have to
remakes
ask
of all
the
time.
locals. Yeah, yeah. And my brother's playing
There's
it.
a
He
lot of
says it's
things.
too scary to play. But I think I think it's interesting. Like these kind of tropes that feel so familiar now, but like this movie is kind of
Yeah,
setting a
this would
lot
have
of
been
them
before
up. I
Silent
mean,
Hill
of
for
course,
sure.
there's always been people going to
Definitely
random
influenced it.
towns.
It had to.
Yeah, but I do like. I think so. Especially like the way that everything is always kind of there's no real time. Like if it needs to be night, it becomes night. If it needs to be day, it'll
Right.
become
I
day,
think
you
that
know? And I
one of you
think
had mentioned this at the beginning,
that's what's cool.
and it was like no one ever mentions that it feels like he's in a dream, but it's just like you're constantly wondering, like you're saying, like the time is always weird, and like whenever
Yeah.
he is having like those like weird visions on his couch after reading the novels, it's like what is real, what's not. They never actually say it, but like the movie totally just makes you feel like in a total bizarro dream state the whole time without ever having to mention it. Like it just puts you there automatically,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
Yeah.
That seems like a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I know.
No, it's because I've watched a lot of bad like direct Lovecraft adaptations, and
Mhm.
obviously sometimes it's just like, oh, just it's like someone doing their first movie or whatever, so it's like they just didn't quite pull it off. But this is like the most like, oh, he like nailed it. I mean, obviously it's John
Yeah.
Carpenter. He's like
Right.
a master filmmaker, so I get it, but it seems very difficult compared to just like straight up like a normal horror movie.
And
quote unquote.
I think that one of the other things is in a lot of the other in Silent Hill it's a good example of it. Like at the end of the day, it ends up being like this cult that's actually the villains, and they've been kind of controlling things behind the scenes or helping things to push it. This is one of the only movies that I've seen where the humans
Yeah.
are incidental. Like what they do and don't do in this film doesn't have any bearing on the
Totally.
overall old
Yeah.
gods plot for the world. And I think that A is harder to grasp because of how scary that is. But B, I think that makes it even to me it makes it more scary but also more poignant because it's like again, we're trying not to get political on here, but right now it feels like there's nothing really we can
Yeah.
do to stop what's happening. If you disagree, and
Yeah.
and if you don't disagree, why are you on this podcast? It doesn't matter.
No, but yeah, it's like you literally like you just kind of have to. Well, like I said, we're not spoiling the end of the movie, but
Right.
the last 10 minutes of this movie feels like what it's alive,
Yeah.
like to be alive right now. Like that's
Right.
just like how you have to like
Yeah.
cope with like being alive. Yeah.
And I think again, like Josh kind of opened my eyes because you needed someone cynical to be like, no, it gets worse. Like things can get worse if you're
Yeah.
not like looking out for each other. And like he even says it kind of at the beginning, like we fuck the air, we fuck the water, we fucked each other. It's like, yeah, these are the crimes of humanity that we've kind of
Right.
become a
We will
society
reap
of
what we sow.
selfishness, and
Yeah.
that's what these old and that's what these old gods are coming to prove. Like, no, there's things that we have to like band together to defeat, and if we don't want to do that, then
Yeah.
we tariffs.
And it's not just a cult pulling the strings in the background.
But
Right. It's true horror.
exactly, yeah. And the cult is inconsequential to those of you in that cult. But yeah, I think this movie works on so many levels. I think it's really good. I think
Yeah.
it's really scary. It's really fun. It's like all the that's what I like about John Carpenter films is that even though they are like The Thing is probably if not the scariest, one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Even now, even when I watch it again, it still kind of freaks me out a bunch of times. But you love
Yeah.
McCready, you love Childs, you love like the characters. It's very fun. It's very funny, and I think that makes it even scarier. Is that you see these guys kind of be normal,
Right.
and then you
And
see how bad
it
it's gonna
starts off
get.
with like Sam Neill being
And
put into an insane asylum. So you're like, okay, we're starting off really dark, and it's like kind of weird feeling, and then it jumps into,
mhm.
yeah, I solve cases for fraud, and I'm really good at it, and here's what I do, and you're like, I love this guy. This is the best guy ever.
Yeah. And how did he? Well, and that's actually the funny thing is, you realize that he is not actually crazy. Like at the end of the movie, he just did things he knows a crazy person would do to be put in the asylum because he's like, I can hide out here. I
Yeah.
can avoid like what's gonna
I
happen
know.
out there. And I'm like, oh, that's such a
Right.
good like twist on it that, you know.
Well, and I think there's that thing where he picked someone to kill that
Was
like
already like
already on his way,
stutter caned out. Yeah,
but
he
it's
had
that thing
the
where
bleeding eyes. Yeah.
he's the only one who knew it, and so
Yeah.
Right, so he looks like a crazy
yeah.
person. By the way, I looked it up. Jurassic Park the movie came out 3 years after Jurassic Park the novel, but Jurassic Park Lost World came out 2 years
Gotcha.
later. So
Right.
they were really pumping
Yeah.
that garbage out after the first one. So
But yeah, I think that this movie. I mean, it's hard for me not to like a John Carpenter book, but I mean movie.
Yeah. My God.
I'm falling for Sutter Kane fans.
Get your mediums
Um,
right.
but I think
Yeah.
it works for so many ways. I think it's just so cool. I really like this movie. I think it's probably the most forgotten, other than like The Ward, the most forgotten Carpenter
Yeah.
film because like nobody really talks about it in terms of quality and how much people talk about
Totally.
it.
Yeah.
It's like the most mismanaged.
I didn't know this was supposed to be part of like a thematic trilogy. I just thought he made
Yeah.
cool movies.
Well, I don't know. Okay, again, I don't know why we're doing Wikipedia style fact checks, but Amblin and Universal bought the rights to Crichton's novel Jurassic Park before it was published in 1990. So no, you were wrong
Still
twice
took him
in a
3
row.
years to
gosh.
make it.
Jesus Christ! I like that you were like you came with two actuallys
Oh
and you
my
were
God.
both wrong on both times.
Well, no, if it takes you 3 years to release the movie,
Listen.
I don't say that The Empty Space was released the 2 years before you actually
buddy,
filmed it.
you're comparing Michael Crichton to Sutter Kane. All right, Sutter Kane, he gets shit done. He's
I
got
do
two
like
heads.
Sutter Kane securing the the Amblin
Yes,
release
the old
I wanna
from
do-
Olsen.
Mr. Spielberg.
I want to do a Lion King 1.5 style movie where it's just Sutter Kane as an evil demon that's possessed by old gods who has to sit through optioning
Yeah.
meetings with Universal.
Next. Yeah,
And he's like,
totally.
I thought I was evil.
They're like, hey, we need you to rewrite the script again. Like the female
Yeah.
lead doesn't have enough to do.
What? He's like, what the hell's a cinematic universe?
This is all one.
That's the notes there. That's what he said.
They were so little humans.
But
Yeah.
but no, I think it's a really good movie. Guys, do you have any last words that aren't Wikipedia fact
One
checks
thing we forgot
about
to mention
in the
was how this movie is really just about
Or Jurassic Park.
old guys wanting Sam Neill to stop smoking because he can't smoke around them at all, and he's telling him to put it out. There's like 10 scenes of him putting a cigarette out, and it works. He's not smoking at the end.
Damn.
Truth.com.
That is because that was the big shift in the '90s. Was
Yeah.
like they were trying to
Don't
get people to
smoke.
stop smoking indoors. So they're
If,
like, hey, cut it out.
man, if the only way to defeat demons was to smoke a lot of cigarettes, I would be in heaven already.
We got this.
I don't even need to go up there. I can smoke. I have a legit reason to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah,
We're good.
College Andy has killed every
27
like
at a
demon
time.
forever.
It would cut to a demon, and then it would just cut to me like at a grocery store, like
Yeah.
with 5 cartons. Like, I'll take these.
But no,
Get shit
10 out of
done.
10. The movie was great. It was so good.
But yeah,
Love it.
great movie. Yeah, it's very fun. I will also say, and watch. This is why this is only for the guys who've watched this movie. So again, watch this movie first. But the very beginning of the movie, John Carpenter wanted "Enter the Sandman" by Metallica, but John Carpenter had a John Carpenter budget, so he could not afford it. So he just made a song that he thought sounded exactly the same.
I didn't know that. That's fun.
Go listen to that song. Go listen to that song.
I didn't make the connection before, but yeah, it's literally a rock instrumental that sounds exactly lifted from Metallica.
Yeah, and it also
over book printing footage, which is great.
It also has like John Carpenter's synthiness, but it's like guitar riffs, and it's very amazing. But great movie, In the Mouth of Madness. Go check it out. Go check out the entire trilogy. We'll eventually. That's 10 stars.
One for each hand. Well, this one's for Prince of Darkness.
Prince of Darkness, The Thing. Oh, and by the way, we do have if you're more interested in The Thing, we did a deep dive on the ending of it, so go check that out too. I'll probably link it somewhere if I remember. But yeah, go check it out right there. And until then, we'll see you guys next week on the Bomb Squad.